Hello, I'm Rachel Dormer. Welcome to my live stream. Today we're going to be making a teapot. If you're joining in the live stream, just say hello in the chat and I'll be able to see who's there. And if you've got any questions or you think I need to explain something a bit better, just tell me in the chat and I'll go back over it. Just going to wait a couple more seconds, see if anybody else is going to join us. And then I'll go through what I've got prepared and what tools I've got here. So just while we do, this is an example of a teapot that I've already made, and this one's been biscuit fired, so it's just ready for a glaze. And the same technique you could use to make a jug as well. So I've got one here that I made that was just an example with some different slips on. So you don't have to make a teapot. It's a really versatile project, joining two pinch pots together. It could be the start of lots of different things, but today I'm going to show you how to make one of these. So I'll just move those out of the way and we'll make a start. So what I've got here is a rubber kidney, but if you haven't got one of those, you could make a little scraper out of a bit of an old credit card or old club card or something. I've got a potter's knife, a paintbrush, an old toothbrush, a bit of sponge, a clay wire and a biro, and I've got a jug of water that I'm going to use for when I join things together. So hello Jenny and hello Kelly on the live stream there. So I'm just going to start off by preparing some clay. I'm working on a piece of MDF here just because it's easy to clean and easy to move everything around, and it means that my dinner table won't get too dirty. And the good thing about MDF is it's really absorbent too, so it'll soak up some of the water. So if your clay's a little bit soggy, that will soak up some of the water. So I'm just going to start off wedging this clay just to warm it up a bit. So I'm just pushing away, rolling up towards me, and this helps to pop any air bubbles. Oh, hello to the Crafts Council too. Helps to pop any air bubbles, get your clay nice and warmed up and just in the right condition for working. I've already wedged this a bit anyway as a little bit of a starter. So I'm just going to give that a few more rolls, and it's the opposite of making bread, because when you make bread you stretch the dough out and you flatten it and you try and get a lot of air into it, but we don't want any air in this or it'll explode when you put it in the kiln. Right, I'm just going to cut that in half now and see if I've got any air bubbles. Really, I want to break it into 3 pieces. So this piece I'm going to keep for the handle and the spout, and I'm just going to cut this in half now. Make sure that they're about the same size, and I'm just going to pat them so they're nice and round. I've got someone joining from Massachusetts. Say hello, hello. Right, just going to smooth over any creases there, and this one too. So just a couple of nice round pieces about the same size. So if you've already done the pinch pot tutorial, you'll already know how to make a pinch pot. So I'm just going to go through this really quickly and make a pinch pot. And what I'm aiming for is to make 2 pinch pots, join them together, and then put a handle and a spout on. So with my right thumb, I'm just pushing in. I've got about half a centimetre thick at the bottom, and I'm going to turn it round with my left hand and just move down like this with my right hand just to pull the clay down. And I'm going to work in a spiral all the way round the clay. So just working it around like that. Be quite gentle with it as well, because if you've got uneven bits where you've pinched it a bit too much, then it can split at the next stage. So just working all the way round. So I'm turning it with my left hand and pinching really gently with my right hand all the way up to the top. If the top starts to get a bit uneven, just pat it down on your table. And now I'm going to swap over. So I've got my fingertips inside and my thumb on the outside. Still turning with my left hand, and I'm just really gently pressing my thumb against my fingertips like that. I'm trying to thin out the base here because I don't want all the weight at the bottom of my teapot or at the top, because then I have a really thick lid. So just working my way around really gently. And the aim is to have 2 pieces where the mouth parts are the same size, but it doesn't really matter if the pots aren't the same size or shape. So just working my way around there. So that's the first one. I'm just going to leave that there to dry, to firm up a little bit. I've just cheated a little bit and made some earlier, just as a backup, just in case. So I'm just going to quickly do this second piece. So same again, just pulling the clay down towards me and turning it with my outside hand. You can see the inside there. And I'm just working around in a spiral all the way up to the top. And then I'm going to swap over and put my inside hand, my right hand inside, those fingertips in, and really pressing the clay against my thumb, really nice and gentle all the way around, making sure that we haven't got any thick or thin bits. And then I'll just check for size, just need to make it a little bit bigger. So if your clay is quite soft and you feel like it's not going to keep its shape, you could actually stuff a bit of paper or paper towel in at this point. Hello Kate, just tuned in there. And if you put a bit of paper towel or paper in it, that will help keep its shape as it dries. And then if you do fire it, that will just burn away. So that looks like a good fit to me. So to join it, I've got my toothbrush and water, and I'm just going to scrub around the join. So just imagine that the water is glue, and everywhere you want it to stick together, you're just going to scrub it like that. And then I'm just really gently going to press those together, and that will seal in the air, and that will help keep its shape as it dries. Now I'm going to blend over with my thumb just to close that join. Now don't be tempted to add more water to it, because the water actually makes the clay start to break down. And if you've got really warm hands, you feel like your clay is starting to crack, just add a bit more soft clay to it rather than a bit more water. Alright, so it looks a bit like an ugly potato at the moment, so that's a good sign. The next thing I'm going to do is pat it with my rubber kidney. I'm going to work over the join first of all, and then I'm going to work up and down my potato in a figure of 8. And what I'm doing here is I'm sealing the join, and I'm getting rid of those finger marks, and I'm also going to start shaping it. And while I'm doing that, I'm just thinking about what I'm going to make. And this is where, if you've got a thick and thin bit, this is where it can start to rip. Can you see I've got a little dent in there? I want to even that out. All the way up and down in a figure of 8. Really nice. And I can just smooth over there where I can see the join. Right. So now this comes the magic bit. I'm just going to roll it, and the air inside should help keep its shape and stop it bursting. And I'm just going to roll it just over that join, and now I'm going to roll it on its end. And what I'm trying to do is make it a bit rounder and a bit more teapot shaped. So just working my way round one end like that, and then I'm going to turn it over and roll the other end. Looking good. Very satisfying. And then roll it in the middle. So you can be as creative as you want at this point. You might have an idea of making a teapot in the shape of something like a cupcake or an animal or something special. Or you might just want it to be really beautifully round and smooth. So if you do want to do that, you can just smooth over with your kidney. If you haven't got a kidney, just use your fingertips like that. I think this one I'm going to make into a cube. So I'm just going to block the 6 sides of a cube there, like that. And it's starting to look like it's got a definite top and a bottom to it. So I'm just going to pat round like that. So I've got a really nice square base and a roundish top, just popping through little cracks there. Just smooth those over. Right, I'm going to put that to one side now just to rest, and I'm going to make all the extra bits that go with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the little handle for the top, for the lid. So I'm going to roll a sausage really gently like that, and then I'm just going to bend it round. Now that's quite tall, it'll crack as it dries, so I'm just going to, if it's too tall like that, so I'm just going to cut a bit off, put that together, just smooth over the top. Or you could just do a sort of a lozenge or a bead like that as your top piece. And what I'm going to do now is just join that to where I want to be able to lift the lid off, so that by the time I actually come to top the lid out, it should be a little bit drier. So I'm just going to put that on there and leave that for a minute. And now I'm going to roll the handle. So I'm going to squeeze off a kind of party sausage size piece of clay like that. I'm just going to roll it really gently. Don't press too hard. It's the rolling that does the work, not really you pressing. And this is going to be my handle. And I want that to be about a finger thick. So still a bit thick there. I'm going to cut that down. So I often think it should be about the size of the handle of the knife, and then just a little bit longer. So I'm just going to trim that using my knife as a guide. Put these bits to one side. I'm going to make it half round by bashing it down on the table, and then bend it into a question mark shape. Just press it down like that. So that's going to be my handle. If I join it now, it'll fall off because it's too soft. So I'm just going to put that to one side and let that dry. And while it's doing that, I'm going to make the spout. So I probably don't want quite as much clay as this. I'm just going to take about a third off. So I'm going to use about this much for the spout. Make it into a nice round ball and then flatten it. You could roll it out. I'm just trying to just use as few tools as possible really. So I'm just flattening this out on my board, and I want it to be about 1/2 centimetre thick and quite nice and even as well. So make sure it's not thick and thin or thin at one end. Right, so that's about the right size, and then I'm going to cut the shape in it for a spout. So I always call it an A-line skirt. I'm sure it's got a proper mathematical name, but if I just cut that shape, and I'll show you what I mean, and you can tell me if you think that looks like a A-line skirt. So that's the shape for your spout, like that. And of course, if you're making lots of these, you could always make a template, but I'm just going to go with the flow right now. So I'm going to just press the ends down to thin them out a bit, all the way around, apart from the big end, because that's the bit that's going to join onto the teapot, and I want quite a bit of clay there. And then I'm just going to fold it over my finger and roll it up. I'm just going to thin out those edges again, and then a bit of toothbrush and water on the join. I'm just going to fold that over, keeping my finger in there. Fold it over and then blend that in like that. Good. And if you've made it too long or a bit of a funny shape, just recut it and do another one till you get it right. Just going to smooth out the end a bit there, and this is where the biro comes in handy. I'm just going to take my finger out and put the biro in. Just going to smooth the join on the inside there. Push the biro in so that pouring bit is really nice and round, and I'm just going to trim off that spare bit there. And I'm stretching out the edge here, so I've got a really good surface area to join onto my teapot. So you can already see that's going to be on there, so proportions are all right for that one. Okay, I'll just move some of this clay to one side. So this one's still a little bit soft. If I cut it, there's a chance it will collapse. So I've got one that I prepared a couple of hours ago, and the lid is really nicely joined on there. So I'm just going to carry on smoothing this one a little bit with my kidney, do a bit more of the finish on it, and get it really nice and smooth. And then while I'm doing that, I'm just thinking about where I think the front is and where I think the back is. So here's the spout that I made earlier in the handle, and I think I'm probably going to join them roughly like that. So with the spout, you want the fill line, wherever the top of the spout is here, that's as much water as you'll be able to put in it. So if you put the spout too low, you will only be able to get water up to there. So you want a really nice high spout, a bit higher than the rim of the lid if you can. So what I'm going to do is just offer that up to my teapot body and mark round really lightly with the knife where I think it should join. Check it's in the middle. I don't know if you can see that's not quite in the middle, so I'll have to do that again a bit neater. So I'm just going to straighten that up. Straighten up a little bit, move over and just mark those lines out. And now I want to cut about a 1cm hole in the middle there. Alright, and take that clay out. You can see it's quite chunky, and then I'm just going to stretch that out a bit. And I could probably just cut a tiny bit more off there as well. So I'm just going to really gently cut around there. And while it's like this, I can smooth the inside so there's no rough bits on the inside. And then with my toothbrush and water, I'm just going to scrub round again for my join. And then do the same on your teapot spout. And then just push that in. And I'm just looking down the top here to make sure that it's all really nicely in a straight line. Check on the side, make sure the angle's really good before you start to join it. And then I'm just going to blend in with my fingertip. And the same as when we were joining the top, don't be tempted to add more water to it. If it feels like it's not sticking properly, add a thin sausage of clay. Otherwise, if you add more water, you just end up with a bit of a sticky mess. So just really gently smoothing all the way around there. I'm going to go back over it and work this with a sponge later. I just want to get the rough shape together first. And now I'm going to put the handle on. So same again, I'm just going to make sure that I'm working in a really nice straight line. So I've got it towards me, but I just scrub down the outside with my toothbrush and water. That gives me a really nice straight line to join the handle, and I know that I'm not going to join it at a funny angle. And because that's dried out a little bit as I made it earlier, I'll just pop a bit of water on there. And then really gently press it in. Have a look from all angles. Check that you're happy that it's in the right place. And I'm just pushing that in and blend it in with my finger. And this is where the paintbrush comes in useful too. I can just flush the join with a bit of water all the way down. So that probably needs a bit of a coil of clay to help it stick down. So with some of my leftover scrappy soft clay here, I'm just going to roll out a really thin sausage, and I'm going to reinforce the join on my handle with that sausage. So just rolling a really nice thin coil. Sometimes the tricky thing about rolling a thin coil is that if your hand's quite warm, you dry it out before it's got thin enough. But we're just going to break a bit off and reinforce that join. And I can come back and tidy that up later when it's dried off a little bit. And I'm just pressing it in round the bottom there where it joins the handle. Just going to blend that in with my finger really nicely. Obviously you can take your time over these, get a really good finish on it. And also it's one of those things where if you leave it for half an hour and come back to it, the clay starts to firm up and you can get a better finish. So sometimes you feel like you're overworking it or just getting it all a bit smudgy. So that's good enough for now. I'll come back to that in a minute. So what I'm going to do now is cut the lid. So I'm really gently going to mark out a circle, but it doesn't have to be a circle. You could do something a bit more creative. So I've just really roughly marked out sort of a squarish circle. If I cut straight down, my lid will just fall inside. So I'm just going to cut in at an angle, and I'm going to push in and then move the tool all the way around. Try not to saw it, otherwise you get a really jagged shape on the inside. So I'm just pushing in with the knife at that angle and then just following that line around that I put on all the way round, really nice and steady. And this is much easier on the pot that I made a little while ago because it's all firmed up a bit, whereas the one I just made is still quite soft, so it distorts. So that's my lid, and I'll just show you the inside. It's pretty meaty in there. So I'm just going to go and thin that out so that the inside thickness is about 1/2 centimetre, and it looks thicker just because of the angle that I cut it at. Be really careful not to stretch it here, otherwise your lid won't fit. But I'm just going to smooth over really gently all the way round. So now that I can get inside, I can actually put a paintbrush in, or a tool, or your finger, and you can work over that join on the inside. So I can just blend over and smooth that in so that that's really well joined. And I'm doing this before I put too much detail or anything on the outside of the teapot, so while I'm touching it. That's okay. Check I haven't made my handle wonky. And a little top tip now is to put a slip of paper in. So that when you put the lid back on, it doesn't stick. So I'm just going to neaten that up. Again, try not to distort the shape too much, but I'm just smoothing it and thinning it out so that it's not really rough. And I'll get my sponge and just sponge over that really lightly. Okay, that's looking all right. And then I'll sponge the top down. I'm adding a little bit more water on the join there for the handle. If I put a bit of paper there, when I leave that to dry, I'm going to leave it like that. But I'm actually going to go back and work into my teapot now. So with the sponge, you can go over and smooth it, really smooth the edges. I've picked up some little crumbs of clay from the board I'm working on, so I'll get rid of those. Looking good. And if you are going to paint it with slips, it's probably best to let it dry in a bag overnight and then work on it tomorrow, because at the moment there's quite a lot of surface water in the clay. So we'll just make that really nice, make that spout really nice. Another thing you can do at this stage is you can just trim the spout off a bit. If you've made it too long, you can just trim it and get a really nice angle. And then I'm going to smooth in round the handle, make the handle really lovely. So with the teapot that I made as the example, I actually put some petals on it to make it look like a flower. So I'm going to show you a couple of little things you could do to your teapot as well. Just blend in there. Right, so that's looking quite nice so far. So something that you can do is you could get a bit of texture on it. I might have a go on this one. This will probably make a really nice sugar bowl actually, but I've got a shell there. You could press in, get some texture on your work, make some little inlays or patterns. That's quite nice. That's gone a bit more of a squared shape, or with the edge of your scraping tool you can press in. The other thing I really like to use is a bit of a ballpoint pen, so I could just press around the top there to put some circles on it. That's really pretty. So I'm just working all the way around the top there. It's easy to overwork it as well and fiddle with it too much. And if you wanted just to make some little petal shapes, you can roll out some little circles of clay with your leftovers. So if I break some blobs off first of all, and then I can just make them into little pieces like this. I'm going to press them down, and then same again with your toothbrush and water. I'll do that there. You can just flatten them a bit so that they're flat at one end and round at the other end, and that makes them a bit more petally. Press that down, if you see what I'm doing there. Just going to press it down into there. Flower Power Teapot. onto there, and then I can just do a bit more water in the middle and a nice little circle for a flower in the middle, like that. There we are. I think that one is pretty much finished. Oops, I've just broken it, so I'll just do a bit of a repair job there. And what that needs really is just to be left to rest. So there you are. That was my tutorial for a hand-built teapot. Didn't take long, but you can always go back over and really take your time over them. And if you want to make a cup, you can do that the same way with the pinch pot and the handle, or follow my pinch pot tutorial. And I'm just going to cut the lid in that sugar bowl there as well. So if you've got any questions, put them on my page or go onto my Instagram feed, which is Pottery Rachel, and leave some comments or send me a picture of what you make and tag me in it. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.